Hey guys, how you doing? Wake up, hello. Hi, okay, welcome. Thanks for bearing with me and having the last session of the day. I know it was very quiet in here. You guys were probably sleeping, right? I am hopefully going to wake all you up because I'm not a monotone speaker. Normally if I had this whole stage, I'd just start dancing for you, but this is taking up a little too much room. What we're going to do talking about today is LightSwitch, but we're going to talk about more of the advanced customization of it, what you can do with it, and different levels of customization, okay, to these applications that you build. So this is a more advanced talk. Who has not downloaded the beta or built a simple application in this room? Okay, of those people who did not make it to the intro session, okay, you guys might be a little lost. I will go at speed of light. I will kind of give you the overview of what LightSwitch is about. Who of those 4 people back there don't know what LightSwitch is, and just decided to come into the talk because I look cute? I don't know. One person. Okay. Okay. Good. Or who it's for and that sort of thing. Okay. You might not have had experience building the apps, but you know what it's a business, data-centric, forms over data type of applications you build with it. Okay, my name is Beth Massey. Let me introduce myself before we get started. Most folks usually know me. I work on the LightSwitch team. I blog about LightSwitch a lot. I work on the BizApps team inside of Visual Studio, and so we do a lot of other things besides LightSwitch, Office and SharePoint tooling, Azure tools inside of Visual Studio. Most of everything around data in Visual Studio, that's us. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about a new product, a new cool addition to the Visual Studio family called Visual Studio LightSwitch. And I hope you guys have made it to the booth at some point, and started talking the ear off of a couple of our product team members there. We have an architect and a tester there that's just gone crazy. Robert's been there. I'm going to be on booth duty all day tomorrow. So if you have additional questions after this, you can come up to me there, okay? All right, so let's get started. What is LightSwitch for the couple people that haven't built an application with it? Really what it is the simplest way to build business applications for the desktop, for the web, for the cloud. Okay, so really what it comes down to is you have to figure out whether or not your applications fit into this type of environment. Okay, it is a specialist tool. It's for specifically building data-centric, forms over data business applications. Okay, all right, I'm going to get into a little bit more of the details of, if you were in the intro session, you saw how to build an application end-to-end. Okay, I'm going to kind of take an end-to-end application I already have, and we're going to make it better. Okay, in the room, do we have everybody in this room gets paid to write code? Who doesn't? A couple people. You guys are like IT pros, more for hardware side, or you guys business guys? Yeah, you work for Microsoft, so you're probably like some business guy, right? Okay. Okay, everybody in here is paid to write code, which is good, because what I'm going to talk to you about is how you can take a LightSwitch application and extend it using your Visual Studio professional skills. Okay. All right, so the way that the development experience is in LightSwitch, you start by describing your data, because LightSwitch is all about data and screens when it comes down to it. Okay. So you have to start with data, describe your data, and then you start creating screens based on those entities that you've created. Okay. Now you've got, sort of a prototype going of, some data and some screens, and now we start to refine those things, right? You start, kind of an iterative development approach that you take. You start to define maybe some custom layouts and change the way things look. You start to author business logic, right? You start to write validation rules and maybe some workflow kind of logic, okay, so from screen to screen. And defining custom queries. You want to start to limit the data. I mean, maybe you don't even have any custom filters on your data, but then all of a sudden the application starts to grow and grow and grow, and now you go back and you're like, oh, we need to define some filters and sorts maybe on our data. Okay, so you start defining queries. What I'm going to explore more in this talk is about extend. So once you have a basic out-of-the-box LightSwitch application, you can actually go and explore components, okay, or extensions, we call them, from other folks like you, professional developers that write them, or component vendors that sell them. And you can grab these extensions and just consume them and use them in LightSwitch. And it just depends on what the extension does. And I'm going to show you some really cool examples of some extensions that we have. If you don't want to go full-blown extensions, and Visual Studio extensions, it's just a V6 kind of, creating an extension. It's very, very similar. Okay, it just has some LightSwitch specific stuff in there, but really it's basically just a V6 package, okay, that you create. If you don't want to go full-blown like that, and you don't want to distribute it to the world or the rest of the developers in the world, you just want to create some custom controls, you can do that too. We'll build some custom Silverlight controls, and you can consume them and use them in LightSwitch. So if you don't like what's in the box, if it's not doing something that you need, like a chart or something specific for your business, you can go ahead and create your own Silverlight controls using those skills that you have, and you can use them inside of LightSwitch. So we'll build that. You can also integrate with custom data sources on the other end of the pipe. Instead of the UI side, on the data side, out of the box, we support anything that an Entity Framework 4 provider supports. So, and RSS Bus just released a QuickBooks provider for Entity Framework 4 last week, I think. So that's pretty cool. It connects to QuickBooks data. So you've got SQL Server, you've got Oracle, you've got SQL Azure, you've got SharePoint also as a supported data source as well. Now, if those aren't, you don't have a database, you maybe have like a custom repository or something like that, then what you end up doing is you create a RIA service wrapper around your data source. Okay? You can go like write an Entity Framework provider, okay, or you can just create a RIA service and consume those RIA services inside of LightSwitch as well. Okay? So there's a lot of customization, there's a lot of levels of customization with that. So let's talk about the architecture, because I can't really get into how to really get deep in customizing LightSwitch unless we talk about the architecture. Okay, it's not all smoke and mirrors and magic. It really is like a 3-tier application, just like the types of applications you're probably building today. You have a client tier, a middle tier, and you have your data sources. Okay, in the client tier, we're working with Silverlight 4. Okay, RIA services. And you can have either a desktop or a browser-based, out-of-browser, or which would be desktop, out-of-browser Silverlight application or an in-browser Silverlight application. Okay, so it just depends on where you want rich versus reach. Okay, you're basically using RIA services to connect to your middle tier, which is running, in ASP.NET 4. Okay, so you got the full .NET framework on your middle tier, and technically, even though LightSwitch applications are always logically n-tier, you could physically deploy them as 2-tier applications. Okay, so we're not forcing you to have a web server, but as professional developers, we probably want a little more scale out of our applications. So we definitely have the middle tier there. And then, of course, the data access, like I mentioned. So, okay, these are like supported, and then other ... means you can customize that layer. So when it comes down to it, and IIS 6 is also supported as well. When it comes down to it, you're looking at a lot of the technologies under the hood that LightSwitch uses, you're using today. It's using Silverlight, it's using the RIA services, it's using Entity Framework. Okay, it's SQL Server. It's not. We didn't invent a new UI technology. We did not invent a new data access technology. Okay, we created a development environment for creating these business applications. Okay, and so under the hood, we're doing best practices in n-tier design as well as MVVM. Okay, on the Silverlight side, on the UI side. So there's a lot of great minds at Microsoft building this stuff. Okay, all right. So you trust us. Trust us. All right. So very good. All right. The data workspace there, we're going to get into a little bit. The data workspace is a set of data that you're always working with inside of a screen or inside of the application itself, and it serializes itself back and forth. So what's really cool about LightSwitch is you don't have to know what tier you're programming on, okay, necessarily, if you stay inside of the development environment. Okay? I'm actually going to go outside the development environment a little bit, meaning the designers themselves, and show you how you can put your own code in the server or the client. And at that point, you do need to know that you're working with Silverlight or you're working with the framework. Okay? All right. So LightSwitch building blocks. There's different SKUs, we call them Visual Studio Editions, okay, and things that you can do with these editions. Visual Studio LightSwitch Edition is all about building LightSwitch apps only. File new project, all you see is LightSwitch in the list of templates, LightSwitch. You choose VB or C#, and that's all you go. Okay, so that's about creating screens, queries, entities, business logic. I'm going to show you a lot of customization that you can do with just that edition. Okay. However, if you want to start building, the custom controls, there's Silverlight controls. You're going to need the Silverlight templates now. You start building the RIA services. You start creating, extensions like shells and that sort of stuff. Then you're going to need at least Visual Studio Professional Edition. So if you guys were in the intro talk, Robert had Visual Studio LightSwitch Edition installed. So very simplified, menu system. There's no such thing as a toolbox. Those kinds of things are just taken out. All the clutter is just taken out. I'm going to be running Visual Studio Pro. Okay, so you guys are going to be familiar with like the menus, and all the tools are going to be in there. Okay, so don't get confused. LightSwitch is a simplified environment, but it integrates right into the upper level SKUs. Okay, for professional developers. All right. So with advanced development inside of LightSwitch itself, even with just LightSwitch installed, okay, you have access to all the LightSwitch framework APIs, Silverlight and .NET frameworks themselves. Okay, you can create custom screens. You can do all sorts of stuff. You can access the save pipeline, validation, create kickoff workflows, send emails. We're going to do some of that today. Okay, you can write complex and composite link queries to create those queries themselves. You don't have to use the query designer. You can write code if you want. COM interop, if you're doing a desktop, out of browser application, you have COM interop at your fingertips. Okay, so and you can publish to IIS or Windows Azure, and you don't need the higher level SKU to do that. Okay, you can do that all with LightSwitch. You can consume extensions that other people build for you. Okay, you can absolutely. Okay, Extension Manager is inside of LightSwitch. Okay, so you can download and install LightSwitch extensions. But if you have Visual Studio Pro, you can now build those extensions and build those custom controls and package them up into extensions so that you can distribute them or sell them, okay, or give them away for free because you love the community, right? Okay, so I want to make that clear. Even though I'm going to have VS Pro installed, you can do a lot with LightSwitch. Okay, so let's jump into some advanced development. Okay, so I want to show off. I have a completed application. And I'm going to show it to you, kind of browse around, we'll play with it a little bit, and then we'll back up and build some pieces of it. Okay, that's how I'm going to do the demos. Okay, so this is, it's got, let's see, a few tables here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 or 8 tables, and this is an application that is meant to manage construction projects, customers, the materials used on the construction project, pictures that are taken on the construction projects. Those sorts of things. And so it's basically for contractors to manage their projects. Okay, so and Contoso, that's that fictitious company of Microsoft. So you'll see that when we log in, we've got a kind of a customized home screen. You see my upcoming appointments. It knows who I am. I'm logged in as test user because I'm in debug mode here, but it knows who I am. I'm looking at current projects here. I also got some static images on the screen, just have common tasks. This is kind of just a little bit. This is not one of those pre-canned screen templates. You can have total flexibility in how you create the screens. You don't have to take the screen template. You could create a screen template and delete the whole content tree and start on building your own screens. And so that's kind of how you're looking at it. You're looking 2 grids here, and actually this is a tab control with no multiple tabs, just a little tab control seen over here. And so you've got all the buttons across the top as well. Okay, so this guy has a couple interesting things. We've got let's go into like the exterior remodel here. Okay, so this is the project screen. So what we're doing is we're tracking all the materials list here of what's going on the project. We also are tracking some pictures. Now, none of this stuff all this stuff is built in. There's no extensions. You're not looking at anything customized here at all. Okay, this is not something that you have to have Visual Studio Pro to do. You get all this stuff for free, especially like these little, image editors and things like that. I'm sure clear this. Yes, we can delete the image. I can get, another one, and this is all built in. So let's see. I think I've got some pictures of stuff. Let's see. Here, this is actually my house. So some of my construction projects. Okay. So all that stuff is built in for free. Okay, and for project materials. Some new materials. This limits the list of materials that are not already selected. Okay, this is just a simple query that you just eliminate stuff that you already have on there. Okay, so you can kind of visualize this. This screen literally took 5 seconds to create because I just selected I want project, and I have project materials, pictures, and notes as a child, and the screen automatically gave me 3 tabs with some grids, and then I just made some little tweaks on it. One of the things that you get up here that I did add some custom code is project status report. So I'm actually using COM interop, and I'm data binding, using content controls, and I'm data binding all of the data that's on that screen into this document. Okay, so that was just like a little report that we've got going on there, and I'll show you how we can do some of that. I don't need to save it. We also have a map. This is a big map control that's actually inside of the toolkit, in the training kit, in the LightSwitch training kit. You can grab this big map control. I just bound it to an address and stick that. You just create an application key, and you just sign up for a little key on the Bing site, and then you can use this inside of your application. And this is a custom control. Okay, this is a little bit of an extension. Okay, but I didn't need VS Pro to use it because DPE created it for me, and I just am using the extension. Okay, all right. So what else we got in here? Appointments. Appointments is kind of cool. So what appointments do? Let's see. We've got me, test user, and me, and I'm the customer. Let's see. Let's check project status. And well, what time is it? It is 5:15. So let's make it 5:30 to 6. Okay, and we'll save that. And what this does is it intercepts the save pipeline, and it kicks off and it creates an appointment, creates an iCal format, and it sends that via SMTP to the employee and customer have email addresses that we're capturing. If the internet is slow, that's why this is slow. Okay, so it's trying to send via SMTP. If it works, then I have Outlook open, and hopefully I'll get a notification that I have an appointment coming. I actually didn't check my internet. That might have been a good idea. Okay, I think it worked. We'll see. So those are some things. And if you update the appointment, it'll send an update. If you cancel the appointment, it'll cancel it. Let's see. We got to refresh. It's my appointments now, right? So here's check project status sitting right here. If we go ahead and cancel the appointment, are you sure you want to cancel it? It will now go out and it'll send a cancellation notice. Okay, so those sorts of things, that stuff's not built in inherently inside of LightSwitch, but it's actually really easy to do. Like I said, we'll see. I think it works. If it didn't work, it would give me an error. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I know. So I think I have it. I think it's coming. It's just my SMTP server at home is a little slow, so connecting to my SMTP server at home. All right. So a couple other things we've got. We've got a custom report. Okay, so this allows you to, I'll show you how to use this extension. This is an extension up here, okay? So we could say maybe the customer's last name is equal to Massey, and I can add a clause, and, the labor is, maybe greater than, $20,000. That's fine. I think I got one project in there, okay? So now you can create like a little custom report, and I can export that to Excel, and now the user can just kind of do custom queries and return the data they need. There we go, there's my appointment coming through, right? Okay, and then I'm gonna get a cancellation notice too, so, all right, it did work. Okay, so some little features like that. We also have this materials catalog is kind of cool. So I've got this import from Excel. Okay, so all of this data, this is I literally just screen scraped a lot of this construction materials off the internet, right? And I created an Excel spreadsheet. And this little extension, okay, it's like a non-visual extension. This one, well, let's see, I've got structural materials in there. We'll take all the data and it will look at the column. There's my cancellation. We'll take all the columns in the Excel spreadsheet and read them. And then what you do is if it finds a mapping directly, like units is units, they're mapped the same way. This is the field in the table and the Excel column. It'll go ahead and put that by default. Otherwise, it's like, I don't know what you mean. Where do you want me to map this? Okay. And now it'll just import that, and that was really fast, actually. It'll just import this as, see all these added rows. Okay, there's added rows directly in, and now we can just go ahead and save all that back into the database. Okay, and now I can go ahead and export it back out to Excel. All right, so just simple little extensions like that kind of it give you additional functionality that's not right in the box inside of LightSwitch. Okay, so that's where you're going to start customizing. You're not, you can get a really good full-featured application working in LightSwitch that's totally going to be used by the business, but the business always comes up with these additional requirements, and maybe a real programmer needs to step in and come up with some types of these solutions. A lot of these solutions are going to be available just through the extensibility, through the VS Gallery as extensions. Okay, but oops, I don't need to save that. But if you have very specific, requirements, okay, hello, don't save. Okay, if you have very specific requirements for your app that it doesn't make sense to share it with other people, then this is what you the route you would go. All right, so there's some highlights of this application. So now I'm gonna just get out of here, and actually I can close this guy completely down. So I've got this over here. I've got the start. Okay, so this is kind of like I've stripped pieces away from the app. Okay, it's basically the same copy of it with some stripped pieces. So the first thing I want to talk about is building these more complex queries. Now, in LightSwitch, you have access to a lot of code hooks, believe it or not. So here, like for instance, here's appointments. This is the table designer. You're modeling your entities here, right? So the screen resolution is a little small, but you always have a write code button up at the top of your designers. You can access all of these code methods, okay? For instance, a lot of these run on the server, some of them run on the client, some of them run on both. You can kind of tell just by looking at the tooltip, runs on the server. Okay, so these are like intercepting the save pipeline and that sort of stuff, so you can do all sorts of stuff to handle these events. Okay, you also have access control methods, meaning can you even insert, update, or delete? There's a really nice security or access control framework built into LightSwitch. And then here are all the query methods. Now, by default, when you create an entity or a table here like appointment, you're going to get some queries generated for you by default. All, okay, so give me all the appointments, return the whole set, or return one, appointment single. Return single or default, meaning, if don't throw an exception if the ID isn't there. Okay, give me a null. And then you have this pre-processing these queries. So you can actually pre-process the queries that LightSwitch has generated for you, or you can obviously create your own queries. Okay, so a lot of these I've done. If we look at the code, this is the code. We can actually view the code from the application data perspective, which means looking at the code that's running on the server side. Okay, you'll see that I got little empty ones. We'll write those in a minute. I've actually said, anywhere we ever have employees, order them by the last name, first name. I don't have to actually create another set of queries. I could, but I could just modify. I'm just modifying the default queries. So let's go ahead and create a query ourselves. So I'm going to create one let's do projects. Let's do that over budget projects. So I'm going to add the query. Okay, this one's projects over budget. Now, the reason this is a very simple designer, obviously, right? You can add filters, single, and then I can go in and say, well, here's all of it looks at the relationship to the parent, so I can get up to the parent because there's a single, parent there. It's kind of limiting, though. What I really need to do is I need to aggregate all of the project materials to get the cost of that, add it to the labor, and then figure out if that is higher than my original estimate. So the designer doesn't really let me do that. Okay, it doesn't let me aggregate that child collection right here. But it's not a problem. We can write a query to do that. And here's that write code area I was talking about before. So here's the pre-processed query. So now we can go in here and write the code. So you notice that you're getting the query by ref here. Let's move this out of the way real quick. Okay, so this is the query that's coming in. So if I actually had some specified a filter or sort in the designer, I'm getting that sent to me. Okay, so you're kind of just adding on to that. So you can use both. You don't have to pick one or the other. You can say, I'm going to use the designer and pre-processed query. Okay, so you can use them both together. All right, so I'm going to say, okay, this query, I'm going to return the query. Query equals. Now I'm going to have to write link. So let's see, from P, that's our projects, right, in query, whatever it's filtered on and everything already. Let's see, I'm going to create like cost. Cost is going to equal p.labor plus. Now here's where we have to aggregate this thing, right? So we got to aggregate all of the the materials in p.project materials. There we go, project materials. Okay, into a sum, right, of m dot price times quantity, m dot quantity. Okay, so that's the aggregate. That's our cost. So now they say where the cost is greater than the original estimate. Okay, and let's just sort it by order by start date. Okay, select P. Okay, so now I'm just returning, this aggregate is calculating our, cost, and now I can do this. Okay, I couldn't do that in the designer, but I could do this here. So let's go ahead and create a screen for this. So I'm just going to add a new screen for our projects over budget. I'll just do a search screen, a little read-only screen. Projects over budget. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and run it. Now, if I had specified parameters, optional, you can specify optional parameters or required parameters, that sort of thing, and you create the screen on that. LightSwitch will go ahead and create a little text boxes or whatever they should be for those parameters. Okay, so it's pretty cool. All right, so we've got search projects over budget. This was the default name of it. Okay, so we've got two. Let's see, original estimate. Labor, total cost. Yep, so these two are the projects over budget. Yep. So let's make it a little bit more obvious that this is bad. We don't like contractors that do this. So our total cost is going to be a font style warning. Okay. And now it just made it in red. Okay. So all right, so that's just an easy way to customize those queries. All right. Any questions on query customization? That's one level of customization that's pretty easy. You can get to a lot of code that way inside of LightSwitch. Okay, so it has a lot of code hooks. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to show you just diving a little bit further, a little bit deeper into the framework now. So what I want to do is, let's just save that. Okay, let's go over here. Let me pin this down. What I want to do is I have employees, okay, and I want to be able, right now, only the administrators can modify employee records. Okay, so but what I want to do is create a little audit trail. This is very common in business applications, right? Create a little audit trail, change tracking, to make sure that we record who made a change to the employees. Okay, so let's create a new table called employee change. Okay, and we'll need to know who changed by. Okay, that'll be a required. Original values, new values, and what else? Updated. How about that? The timestamp. Okay. All right. So now all I need to do is just add a little relationship to the employee here. So we're just going to track changes, and I'll just cascade delete. If I delete the employee, I don't need a history anymore. Okay, so we could do that too. We could track deletes as well. I'm just going to track updates right now. Okay, you'll get the idea once we get in here. So now what I need to do is I need to go to the employee, and I need to write some code that intercepts that anytime the employee is being updated, and then do something. I need to add a record to employee change. Right. So we can go into write code here, and we'll see here are these methods. These are actually executing while the save is happening on the server side. Okay, so if I wanted to write deleting code, I could do that too. I could track the deleting, right? So I'm going to do the employee updating. Okay, and I've got a little snippet of code here that I'm not going to bore you by typing this all out. So we'll walk through it though. Okay, so here's what I'm doing. In this case, I'm just adding a new employee change record, setting, the entity that's coming through here is an employee, so just make sure that the relationship is set up. Sorry if I said something bad. Changed by, the application object inside of LightSwitch has a user object, which you can get their full name, so you always know who's logged into the system. Okay, and then I'm just going through, and now I'm diving a little bit deeper into the framework. Now, this should look familiar if you're familiar with Entity Framework. You're starting to get at, entity state, original new values, all of that stuff you can drill into. The key is to actually get into what this entity, any entity in the system has this details property. Notice if I'm in common, you don't see it. Okay, I like that actually. But here, if you type details, you'll see this details, and what the heck is that? Woo! Okay, so now you see entity conflict, entity state, entity sets. You can get at a lot of this stuff. Okay, all the methods, the properties. I'm actually querying here. In this case, I'm querying all the storage properties, because an entity might have calculated values as well, right? So I just want to say just the storage properties, save those, okay? And I'm then getting the original value and the current value here and storing that. All right, so let's create a little screen so we can see these changes too. Let's create a new screen, and we're just going to do a search screen again. And this time we will see employee changes. Okay. All right, let's F5 and see if this works. Now at this point, the designer is helping me write this code. I don't really have to know anything about the total architecture that's happening behind the scenes. This is the first level of customization we're going to go over. Okay, so here is administration. I have manage employees. Okay, let's just make let's change this to, I don't know, $50,000. I think that's $50,000 an hour. That's the contractor rate. A day, more like maybe, okay, a year. Okay, we'll say that year. So then we save it. Okay, it executes. And then we go here, employee changes. Okay, so there's our original and new values. Okay, so that's just a simple way to get an audit trail. So that's how you can start diving a little bit more deeper into the LightSwitch API. Okay, there's a lot of stuff in that API. Okay, all right, so let's move along. If there's any questions on audit trails and the framework and that part of the framework. Okay, no. All right, so let's do another. Let's intercept the saved pipeline a little bit more. Okay, let's do that appointments where we sent off that appointment. How did I do that? Okay, so this requires knowing a little bit more about the structure of the app physically. Okay, all right. So what I'm going to do here, just scratch that down. Okay, I'm going to do this. There's this little thing up here at the top of the Solution Explorer called File View and Logical View. This is kind of different from any other project. I think in Visual Studio, you're always looking at file view. That's the files on the system, right? On your, that's it. That's the solution. A bunch of files. LightSwitch is all about logical views. We really don't want the user to have to muck around with the files itself. Okay, so but you can. We don't stop you. Okay, so now we're looking more at like what you probably are familiar with looking at this view. If you're a professional developer, this is the view you're usually working with, right? So here's our client, our common, our server. Okay, so the common code is the code that runs on both sides. Client is the Silverlight framework, and server is the full .NET framework. Okay, so now we can start going in here, and I'm going to go into the server side, and you'll see that there's the user code. Okay, so here's that data service. That's exactly where we were. Okay, it's the same thing. I have this little. I'm going to include this in the project. I have a little email helper, okay, this little SMTP mail helper that I'm going to stick in here. Okay, so this is like, now you can start extending LightSwitch with your own classes, okay, your own helper methods, anything that you need. You can go into this view, stick it in your user code this subfolder here, and now I can call SMTP mail helper from anywhere in the system, okay, on the server side. All right, so you won't see it in the client side, you'll see it on the server. So what it is really just doing is this simple, looking up my SMTP settings in the web config file, and then it's, sending off this iCal, which is basically creating it here. Okay, this is the standard iCal format, okay, for appointments, sending appointments. All right, so that's it. So then we can go back over here, and what I want to do, I actually want to go back to the logical view. It's a little easier that way. I want to intercept the appointments updating, inserting, and deleting. So, because I want to make changes, I'm going to be tracking this with a message sequence number. I'm going to be tracking if I make updates, you up the message sequence, you have a message ID, which is a GUID. If we go into the right code for which one? For like, it doesn't matter, for deleting, okay? Actually, I'm going to go scroll up a little bit, because here we have inserting. I already wrote these two. For inserting and updating, so updating, I'm upping the message sequence, so I know whether or not I sent you an email or not. And then we're just creating a new GUID string to track the actual message itself. So what we need to stick in here, though, is the actual sending of that email. Now that I have my helper class, inserted, updated, deleting, here we go. We'll see. Oh, now I got my email up, which I probably shouldn't do. I probably should close the email now. Okay. I won't run. We reran it before, but this is where you're going to put. Control V. Okay, there we go. So this is where I'm just going to call. I get the entity as appointment this time, and now I'm just taking all of the properties that I need to send the appointment. Okay, it's pretty basic. All right. So that's just you could kick off a workflow of something else in this way, right? Send that your helper classes could be anything. It's the .NET framework, right? Okay. So any questions on save pipeline? There's a lot of hooks that you can get at there. No? Okay, cool. We're doing good on time, so that's cool. All right, so I'm going to show you in the same manner that you can customize the server side in the file view, you can do that on the client as well. So you have the same thing. The user code folder is here. I have a report helper in this case, and I'm going to include that in the project. And this report helper actually does it does actually data, but it uses OpenXML. If you guys are familiar with that, I'm not going to go into that because it's like a whole other talk. But it uses OpenXML in Office and Word. And what I got in Word is some content controls that are data bound to a piece of XML. And I'm just creating this piece of XML. Okay, so I've got customers' full name, home phone, mobile phone, email, full address. And then what I'm doing is I'm sticking all of the project materials, their quantity. Let's see, the project materials summary field here. Okay. The quantity, the price, and the item total, so that you'll see like kind of the line item totals in those content controls. Okay, and then I'm just telling Word to stick it somewhere. I always love telling Word to stick it. So basically I'm just telling Word, create object, Word application, and then I am really just saying delete that part. Let's see, create that basically custom XML parts is those parts that have the XML inside, and I'm just sticking this piece of XML inside of it. Okay. And then I'm data binding actually kind of on the fly a little bit. So replace child subtree. I'm just kind of like replacing the node inside of the XML with what I want. Okay? All right, so I mean, I have so much of this code on my blog, it's crazy. So if you really are kind of like, what's she doing? Go to my blog. The idea here is I'm customizing the client side now. Okay, so what we can do now is we can use this. Okay, so I've got my report helper. Let's flip back to logical. Oh, one thing that I should point out is in the client generated, I have the project status document. This is actually the template. Okay, so this is where I have all these content controls laid out. See, customer.email, project.start date, and then these right here. Okay, these guys are all content controls. Okay, project material quantity. All right, so if that's the document, it's actually going to be an embedded resource inside the client itself. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and go back to over here and hook up a button or something like that. So we go to logical view. We go to our project detail screen. It might already have the button created. Just need to get some code going. We've got the screen command bar. Here's the project status report. Right click, edit the execute code, and there I just had it commented out. So now you can call my report helper, and I just pass it the project. Okay, so let's go ahead and see that work. Oh, I've got an error. Let's see what we got. Oh, yeah, I've got two deletings. I pasted that in from the snippets here. No problem. Okay. Okay, so we can go, maybe this one is a pretty nice bunch of materials on it and stuff. So here's my project status report, and there it ran. Okay, I just wanted to prove that it runs. All right, so that's basically how we're manipulating some code on the client side. All right, let's get a little bit crazy. All right, so I'm going to flip back to the slides now, so real quick. So that is a lot of advanced development can be done just inside of LightSwitch's framework itself. Okay. Now, I mentioned these things called extensions. Now when we're ready, okay, so I've done all I can with, the LightSwitch itself, and I think I need to build an extension, or I need to build a custom controller. I really do, okay? I'm sorry, but I really do. Okay, so there are 6 extensibility points in LightSwitch, okay? There's a controls, which we'll write one in a second. There's a screen templates, so the list of templates there, I had like 6 of them to choose from. You can add your own screen templates. Business types. LightSwitch has a concept of a business type. Email address and phone number are ones that are built in. Okay, image, money. You can create your own. Social security number, medical record numbers, whatever. Okay, yes?
Beth, back towards the beginning, you were showing the image. Can you have multiple images in one row?
It would just be like multiple image properties on the entity. Yeah, yeah, no problem. So the business types, the themes, okay, you can totally change, the color scheme. We'll do that at the end. We'll change the color scheme of the whole entire application. A shell, you can change the entire look of the entire application, all right? And I have an example of one that one of the devs built. It's kind of cheesy, but I'll do it at the end. And then custom data sources. So I mentioned the RIA services. Yeah, RIA services, or if you really want to go full-blown write an entity framework provider, but technically for us, probably a RIA services would be something to wrap custom data sources around. All right, so let's see what the experience is like. So Visual Studio Pros, right? We're Visual Studio Pros. I'm sure you guys have loaded an extension into Visual Studio, right? Go to the Tools Extension Manager, you know what I'm talking about? Or like blank stares. What? You can extend Visual Studio? Yeah. Okay, so there's the Extension Manager, and there's tons of extensions in the VS Gallery, really, and a lot of them are free, right? So LightSwitch is no different than in Visual Studio. It is Visual Studio LightSwitch, for heaven's sakes. You can extend it just similarly, so it has an extension manager as well in there, okay? So they're just installed like any other Visual Studio extension, except that the extension needs to say that, yes, this is a LightSwitch extension. So, you know, it does know the difference between VS Pro extensions and LightSwitch extensions. Okay, so for building these extensions, okay, this is what I have on this box. Visual Studio Pro or higher, Ultimate will work too. You know, we like it when you have Ultimate, it's more expensive. Plus SP1, we like that. So make sure you have Service Pack 1 on that. And then Visual Studio LightSwitch, I have beta, this is beta 2 I have in. The Visual Studio SDK, you're going to need that to actually build extensions, okay? In general, you need that for building the V6 packages, okay? We have the LightSwitch Extension Development Kit, which is coming soon. I have that installed here, okay? It really makes it a lot easier just to get going and start building LightSwitch specific extensions. And then once you're done, you upload it to the Visual Studio Gallery so the whole world can either love you or ridicule you on your extension. All right, so let's take a look at how we can work with extensions, and then we'll build a couple too. So first I'm just going to start off with building a custom control. I'm not going to necessarily need to package this up an extension if I'm just using a custom control in my own application. So because I have VS Pro, I can right-click on the solution here and can add a new project. Okay, so there's extensibility. We'll do that in a minute. What I want to do is I actually want to just add, what am I going to do? Add a Silverlight project, okay, because I want to create a custom control. I don't like the list box. Let's change it. I like purple and I like crazy, so let's just create like something, a control to, it's different. Okay, so I'm going to create a Silverlight class library, so based on Silverlight 4. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is, just to make it easy, I'm just going to add a user control. Okay, it could be, it doesn't have to be, it could be your own control inherited from whatever. It's just easier for this. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a piece of code, sticks the XAML. I usually use the toolbox. You could use blend. I mean, obviously, this could be blend as well. I'm not the best in the designer world, so I'm just going to, actually, I'll just stick this text box right in here. Okay, so I got the list box in here, okay, and the idea here is I'm going to be using it on the employee's screen. I'm making a specific control for a specific collection, actually. It could be any screen that works with employees, in this case. All right, so, and I've got two-way data binding so that when position, row, rows move inside of the list box, I'm going to have another list box, like the regular standard list box. When we move the position there, it will automatically update in this one, too. So you have two-way data binding going on. Okay, and the selected item, as we select the item, you'll see the update happen, okay? All right, so let's make this a little bit cooler than white because, we already have white ones in LightSwitch. So let's go and make this like, I don't know, let's make the background color coolness. Background, yeah, instead of white, let's go with like, I don't know, azure. We'll make it azure. Okay. Make it kind of azure, right? I don't know, something like that. Let's do a gradient. Let's do like, make it azure again. What color is azure? It's kind of like that, right? That's azure. Okay, there you go. That's our azure list box, list box with pretty colors. Pretend we did that in Blend. And then I'm just going to extract the value to a resource. So if I had more in this user control, that we just have a resource at the top. Okay, so, all right, so now I'm going to build this, just build this guy. Okay, and I am going to, let's just create a new screen. Okay, add a screen. And let's do a list and detail screen. So we'll already have a list on it. Well, I'll just add another list to it. And we'll do it with employees. Okay, and you notice I could go ahead and check off more of the children that I want to show, but let's just work with employees for this example. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the list here. I'm actually going to put our list underneath so you can just see the difference. Okay, so I'm just going to say new custom control. Okay, so now it wants me to add a reference, so I need to add a reference to that control we just created. Okay, so let's choose the control. It's in here, Silverlight control. Click OK. All right, let's see what this looks like. Should be relatively ugly, actually, but this is going to give you how easy it is to use your own Silverlight controls or create controls themselves and then bind them right on to the LightSwitch screens. All right, so what was the name of my screen? Employee list detail, that was it. All right, so there it is down there. It's kind of small, so let's kind of make this a little bit better looking. Okay, first of all, I don't need a label. Okay, by default, that was a label there. Okay, and what I really want to do is I want to stretch this out a little bit, like this way, so we can see it. There we go. All right, save. All right, so now we've got, I've got a little refresh issue going on here. It looks like it is selecting, but it's really little. Okay, awesome. Let's see if I can reposition this. Screen resolution is killing me. All right, here, now that I've got it going, let's see if I can do this. There we go. Okay, just had a little refresh issue, beta 2. All right, so there we go. So now there's the two-way data binding. Okay, that's working. Okay, so that's how you can create custom controls. Okay, now that's not necessarily an extension, but this is like on its way to being one. I can now package this up, and you would ridicule me on the VS Gallery for this extension. You'd be like, what the heck is this? It's Azure. It's an Azure list box. All right, so questions on that. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty flexible, okay? You can also bind to the entire screen content. The whole screen, I was specifically saying screen.employees, working with just the employees collection here. You could like bind to the whole screen itself, and you have access to all of the members on the screen too. Okay, so that gets kind of fun. All right, so let's use some extensions. So now that's a custom control. So that's easy if you want to just create a couple things that you need in your app. But if you want to take advantage of some extensions that we have, the team actually has released, so we've got in the toolkit, we've got the Bing Map and the eBay publish controls. The team's released on the samples gallery because we released all the source code so that you can take a look at how to build extensions. We released this filter control and LightSwitch utilities. Okay, so on the samples gallery, you can go and download that. So go to msdn.com/lightswitch. From there, you can get to everything. Okay, so I'm going to enable this extension. So once you install the V6 package, you click on it, you restart Visual Studio, you go to your project properties here, you now can choose, they'll only list the LightSwitch specific ones here, and now you can choose which ones you want to enable inside of the application. So now I just enabled the filter control. We're also going to need this in a minute, so I'll enable both of these. Okay. So now what that does is it's just, added all the assemblies it needed, and now I have access to whatever the extension does. So in the case for the filter control, what is the filter control? The first thing we're going to need use the filter control is a query, sorry. So I'm going to add a new query, and what am I going to call this? Custom filter, okay, something like that. Okay, and the only thing I'm going to need is a parameter in this case. This is in the documentation for the extension. The only thing I need is a filter term, okay, of type string. And now I'm going to go into the source, not the source, right here, to the preprocessed query for here. All right, so custom filter. And what I'm going to need to do is now I'm going to need to just say the query is equal to LightSwitch filter dot server dot filter, and what it wants is the query, the filter term, filter term, and then the application, me.application. Okay, there's an application. I mentioned this before. There's an application object. Okay, there's your user. All right, so that's that, and so let's create a screen based on that, a custom filter. So screen, add the screen, search screen, and here's our custom filter. Okay, now there's still one last thing left I need to do. Now, what LightSwitch did is it automatically saw, oh, you have this filter term, I'm going to give you a text box because, it's a string. Well, you don't really want the text box. What we really want is the advanced filter builder. Okay, that's the extension that was just popped in there when we enabled it. Okay, the advanced filter builder. Okay, so the other thing I'm going to do is not show the label on that one because it gets kind of funky looking. Okay, all right. You don't need a label, because that is going to be a custom, this is a custom Silverlight control. Okay, so that doesn't suck, like mine. So the way that the filter works is, what it's doing is it has a nice control that actually is going to be looking very similar to the query builder inside your query designer. And what it does is it creates an XML file of all of the filter and sort and search terms that you have in there. And then when you click, go, it sends that to the server piece. There's a server piece. There's a client piece, a UI piece, and then there's a server piece that then parses that XML and executes that search or whatever it is, the filter you added. Okay, so here's the where. Okay, so I'm doing this against projects. So let's just say where, we can do this again, right? Last name equals Massey. Okay, and you can, kind of drill into, the entities that are like above it, right? It's the singles. And I don't know, like start date, is before today? I don't know. I don't want to type that in. How about this? Estimated labor. Let's do labor again. Labor less than, what's less than $20,000? Let's see. There we go. Okay. No, obviously you could. This is a custom control, right? So, Shield didn't put it in there, I guess. I could ask him. I could tell, hey, dude, we need a fix on that. We want some new features. Right? Okay, so you absolutely have every full control over what that control looks like. Okay, he just did that. Actually, this supports groups too. It's pretty cool. Or you can change this to an or instead of an and. Okay, and not. So it can get pretty complex. Okay, and then I can go ahead and export that from here to Excel. So that's kind of using the extension. Okay, there's another one. Another one we've got going on. So this was the importing, right, from inside of our materials catalog. We have, let's see, editable materials grid. What I want to do is I want to basically write that where we can import all of those items from Excel directly in here. Okay, so that's also in the LightSwitch utilities. That was the extension that I enabled there. And so what I'm going to do is add to the screen, add a new button. Okay, and we can call it like import from Excel. Okay, so notice if you guys aren't familiar, this is like your view model on this side. This has all your methods, your properties, your queries here, listed here. And everything inside of here, this is called the content tree. Okay, so this is the view that's bound to the data. It's your view and your data binding, really. And then you have over here, the properties that are related to whatever you're selecting. So notice I could have added another button, new button, and I could have used an existing method. Okay. All right, so this is using the commanding pattern behind the scenes. You'll see can execute and execute on this. So behind the scenes is all MVVM and using the commanding pattern and all this stuff. You just don't have to do it all that hookup yourself. Okay, so let's go ahead and edit the execute code here. And in this case, I think it's just LightSwitch utilities .client .import from Excel. Okay, and all it wants, it needs the actual collection, right? So we have me.materials. All right. Okay, cool. So let's see if this one works. Okay. So here we go. Edit materials catalog. And now we've got this import from Excel. I could have chosen an image for this. I didn't. I forgot. So I've got structural materials here. We just have like some roofing materials and things like that. So here's the mapping dialog that we went through before. So I'm just going to map this correctly. And now there we go. Got it all imported, right? Now I could make changes, whatever, and then save. Okay. And actually, if I had any business rules around that, at this point, the business rules fire when you click save. So you can like implement business rules inside of LightSwitch itself. You don't have to build it into the filter builder, right, or into the control itself. Okay? All right, so that's using extensions. That's creating custom controls and using extensions. And then the final bit of extensibility or customizing LightSwitch is actually creating the extensions themselves. So let's go ahead and do that. This is the moment you've all been waiting for, I know. Okay. You're like, nah, not really, Beth. Okay, I'm going to open up another instance of Visual Studio here. no, I set another instance right here. Okay. And I'm going to say new project. And because I have the LightSwitch Develop Extensibility Kit installed, I have these additional templates installed. Okay. Now, like I said, this has not been released quite yet, but it will be very soon. Okay. So now you don't need this to build an extension. You don't. It's just that it helps you set up all the projects correctly and the structure correctly. Okay. So when I do this, let's call this, I don't know, my theme. Okay. We're just going to create a theme. So you see what it does? It creates all of the projects that you're going to need. Now, notice, now we went to file view. Remember file view for our LightSwitch apps? We had client, we had common, we had server, right? So these things coordinate with those projects. So when you write the server pieces and the client pieces here, that's how they map into your LightSwitch project. Okay, there's a couple other additional things here. The V6 project itself, that's the packaging of the V6 itself. This would be there if you were creating a normal Visual Studio extension. But what's different is this LSPKG. This is a LightSwitch packaging. It's an additional step, it's an additional piece that you need to do for LightSwitch. Okay, so, but when I right-click on here, I can say add, and then I say new item. And now I've got, like, here's the starter for all of the different types of extensions, right? I mentioned there were those extensibility points, so here they are. Okay, so if I wanted to create the shell, it would start to create that project empty, an empty shell for you, and then you could start creating all of these controls for it. Okay, I'm just going to create a theme. Theme 1 is the name because that's just the name of it. And then what you get is the entire, brushes and styles and everything that's in the out-of-the-box look and feel of LightSwitch to start with. You could trash the whole thing and do your own, but these are the names of everything that you would need to figure out. So, right, so here's the normal font style. This is basically the text sizes and the text that we're using. You can change all of that stuff. I'm going to change something that's like a little bit easier for us to see that I changed something. I'm going to change the screen background brush, okay, from white to something else. Maybe Azure, I don't know. So there's white. I guess we could change it to like, I don't know, blue-ish. Bluish. I like blue. So we'll see that really pop on the back of our screens, going from white to blue. Okay, so now what you can do, like when you hit F5 on your extension, what it will do is, let's see, let me actually, well, that's all right, I probably have enough memory. What it'll actually do is spin up another instance of Visual Studio so that you can, and it'll install the extension, and now you can test the extension in this instance while it's running. So you're actually debugging your extension at the same time you're using Visual Studio. You're really debugging Visual Studio, right? Okay, so what you would be is like, okay, well, let's create a new application. So you kind of have to create a new project and test this out. Okay, so create an app, application 2, and create an entity, that kind of thing. And then you can start to see your extension light up in here. Okay, and my extension would light up. It's a little slower because this is a debugging instance too, so it's like a little slower. And I have 3 copies of Visual Studio open and PowerPoint, so my computer's going. Okay, if you go into properties now of this application, go to extensions, you'll see I've got a couple themes. What did I call it? My theme? Right there. I got a My Cool theme, too. I was testing things. Okay, but this is my theme here, and then you can go ahead and test the extension, all right? Because I don't want to create a whole application again. I have one already. Let's pretend I'm happy with my theme. Everything looked great, cool. So what I'm going to do is instead stop this. Okay, and we'll just build it. Okay, rebuild the solution is fine. Okay, now it's created that V6 package. It's packaged it all up, and now we can go over here. Okay, and we'll go into bin, debug. There's my theme. Okay, so now I can click on it. And it's going to say, okay, you want to install this? I said, yep, sure do. Okay, close that. Now you've got to restart Visual Studio. Now if I had stuck it on the gallery, it would have been kind of nice because it's like, oh, would you like to restart Visual Studio automatically and all that. It's a little bit nicer experience. Okay, so now I've got this, and there's, let's see, this one was done. Where's start? Here we go. This is where we were working. So let me go to Properties. Now we'll see it here, My Theme. Okay, so let's go back to the General. All right, so now we've got, instead of the blue theme, you've got Theme 1. I didn't name it that great, but okay. All right, so see how awesome this looks. The most awesome theme ever. Now, if you're really savvy with blend and design, then you obviously can take that whole entire color palette and everything and move it over into blend and then modify it from there. You know, you don't have to use Visual Studio. But there's the blue. All right? Awesome. It's awesome. You guys don't think so, but all right. Whatever. I actually played around with this a little bit, and I ended up with like this really bright pink, rose, purple thing, and I was like, oh, that's horrible. So I decided blue is probably a better idea. But you literally can change all these gradients in here, you know, everything, menu system, every little thing, every tiny little thing. You can change from orange to purple, whatever you want. It's all listed in that gigantic file. Okay? So it does give you a good starting point to get going if you want to modify your theme. Now, I mentioned shells, though, too, right? You can totally change the look and feel. I mean, you see that you have a navigation menu across the top, you know, a ribbon across the top and navigation on the left side, and your screen content is a tabbed control inside the center. I mean, that's what our default shell is all about. Okay, so, but shells don't have to be about that. Okay, so I have a shell. Let's see what we got. I got a couple, actually. I'll show you both of them. There's a mock shell is a little weirder. I will do that in the end. Let's do the Mune shell. So enabled both of them. And what you can do is you can actually mix and match the shells and the themes that you have installed, by the way. Okay? My theme would end up being horribly ugly on the Mune shell, so I'm going to select the Mune shell theme. Okay? Normally when you create a shell, you create a theme with it, so it looks nice. But you can mix and match the actual themes. Okay? All right, so and notice I don't have to do anything. There's no additional coding whatsoever at all to get these themes and shells to change the entire look of the application. Okay, so if you're really good at shells and have a cool eye for design, you can start making LightSwitch shells and people eat them up. 99 cents, $3. I don't know. There it is. Okay, so. You know how it kind of faded in, had a storyboarding of like nice, beautiful things. Okay, here it doesn't have a home screen. Automatically does not open up a default screen, this particular shell. All right, so we go to tasks, and now you can see there's now the home screen opened because I clicked it. But there's home, my appointments, all of this kind of stuff across the top. So this is kind of like, this is its version of the navigation, okay, the navigation menu. Notice that it's got, what else we got over here? The refresh button is gone on. Oh, here, it's up here. Save refresh, search projects. There's no images in this particular one, okay? All right, so that's kind of the Mune shell. And it did make it look a little bit different. Like there's no like lines around any of the grids, you'll notice. They're just kind of like hanging out there. Okay, so that's got a shell theme. That's a shell. Here's another shell. This shell is pretty wacky. I'm like, woo, okay. I don't know if I would buy it, but let's see. The mock shell. Okay, let's do the. Actually, it doesn't have a theme. The mock shell doesn't. So we'll just go ahead with the blue theme. All right. Mike is going to love the fact that I showed off all of his shells. He's one of the developers on our team. All right, here it is. A lot of business apps normally are pretty intuitive, but I was like, Mike, what is this? I see a bunch of balls down the corner. What do I do? I'm like, okay, I guess. Oh, home. Oh, open. Okay, well, home. I guess. Okay, well, click that. I don't know. Let's do it. So let's see. Oh, that goes home. There we go. Screens. Oh, there we go. Let's open a screen. So here is a list of screens, right? That's kind of cool. Wow, really? Okay, cool. And then, it kind of sticks everything in this viewer kind of mode. And here are your buttons down here instead. Okay, you got the buttons down here. So, otherwise it looks fairly similar. I think if you go to like history, okay, it's got a history. Active screens, there's all the ones, and then back home. Home is nothing. I think he just wanted you to get confused clicking that button. Yeah, you can really go wacky here. So if you have two open, then here are your active screens, and they're the history in which you opened them. Okay? So I think he has got a fly in. There you go. There's the fly in, right? So that's kind of cool. It's cool. All right? What do you think? It's like, I'll let them know. It's cheesy, but it's cool. All right? It's just another example of just what you can do, the possibilities of what you can do with LightSwitch and its extensibility model. Okay? And it's not just about the look and feel of the app. It's also about business types I mentioned. Okay? So being able to create more like specific types that you can use on the screens, like automatically, without the user having to code any validation or little editors or that sort of thing. Just like phone number and email address. It all comes together. That's actually probably the most complicated one to build is the business type, because it's got UI, it's got a piece of UI, it's got all this client code, it's got server code, depending on what your validation is for that stuff. But you can like create packs of business types and things like that. All right, so let me flip back to the slides one last time and show you some resources and start taking some questions. I got some time. These are like if you walk away with one thing, remember msdn.com/lightswitch. From there you can get to the forums, the sample, the blog, the training kits, the video, how do I videos, everything, download everything. Okay, so you can just get to everything from there. Our forums are very active actually, so if you have questions, you can obviously take my card and I will answer them, but if you have questions I don't know an answer to, or you're being too lame and not getting back to you, our forums are actually, our team is all there, and they're really responsive. They're actually being really responsive in there. So check out the forums. And then that LightSwitch samples is where you want to get those extension samples. Okay, the filter control, the filter builder, and the Excel importer. Okay, those two are on samples. It comes with an entire code base for you to pull apart too. Okay, all right, questions? Yes. Don't give them the internet. Yeah, not that I know of. I don't think there's any way to lock that down. I'm not sure. It might be a Visual Studio. It'd be more of a Visual Studio issue, right? Yeah. I don't know. Good question. I don't think so. I don't think there's any way. There's not like a way of changing the app market behind it or anything. Yeah. Sorry. Him first. Yes.
Themes and shells are changeable on the fly after the
While it's running? I don't think so, but maybe it's possible. I'd have to ask. I don't know. I'll come up and take my card. Come back to the LightSwitch booth tomorrow. I'll have some other developers with me that might know the answer. That's a good question. Just changing the theme on the fly, I think you probably could do that, but I don't know about the shell. So. Yes?
Is there something for reporting, or is that third-party stuff?
Good question. Yes. So we are working with partners to provide, reporting solutions. Client side. You're talking about client side reporting. Our recommendation for real reporting solution though is reporting services. This is a Silverlight application. So technically, reporting services is HTML reports. So you could create links to the reports and that sort of thing. So that's for version 1. Otherwise, there's a lot of info how to use Office, right? I showed you a basic example of using Word to create those. I also have an example on my blog showing you how you can let users create the templates, the report templates, and how you can dynamically look through them and populate them with data. Yeah. Yes?
Looking at your wording, is that only going to work for out of browser, or do you use LightSwitch to automatically get
It only works for out of browser, okay, because it's using the COM support in Silverlight itself. Yes. Right. Is there what? Yes, there is, and I can't tell you. It will release. I promise. It will release. It will release before the end of the year. Yes?
How do you handle logging and authentication?
Logging and authentication. Okay, so I didn't go too deep into that, but there's an entire access control and auth framework inside of LightSwitch itself. So, you have access control methods on all of the main objects, like screens, queries, and entities themselves. And you could say whether or not user has access to them or not. You create a set of permissions, and then you check those permissions in code. And once you deploy, then you have a user's management screen that you can manage the roles that they're in. You create roles and permissions and that sort of stuff.
And that's where you set up the authorization.
Yep, and will you choose before you deploy what type of authorization you want to use. There's Windows authentication and, authentication, not authorization. So authorization is more like access control. That's you. Okay, authentication modes are Windows and Forms, or none. right? So, and it's actually using the ASP.NET membership provider underneath the hood. So, like I said, we didn't invent our own technology here. We just kind of extended it. Yes?
Is there a way to have look into events in the controls so somebody selects something I can interact with other?
Yeah, there is. At this point, you're going to end up writing a little bit more deeper Silverlight multi-threaded code to kind of handle some of those events. But yeah, you can get into that, and it's more advanced. But yeah, it worked. Yeah.
Since it's Silverlight based, would it be easy to port to a Windows phone?
It's Silverlight, Silverlight 4, like desktop edition, whatever you want to call it, right? It's not the phone version of Silverlight, okay? It's not the. Besides, like, did you see that screen? I mean, that really wouldn't fit on a phone. I mean, like, maybe if you had a cool shell and you're only showing a little bit of data, maybe I could see it. But honestly, these types of applications, you really are going to write probably your own UI for the phone, anyways. That's probably using the same data. So you can use the data. You can use the data from LightSwitch's middle tier actually to connect other systems to it. Actually, we don't make it like completely easy, but you can totally hack into it. It's like a set of services that you can get at as long as you auth into them and everything. So, and there's a couple blog posts by the community on how to do all sorts of wacky things like, get it to work with, .NET Nuke, authentication, that kind of stuff, how to integrate. What if you want it as part of another big website? What if you want to reuse the services on the middle tier? You can do all that stuff. It's just like, it's more advanced development, right? We're all advanced, so now, right? We're all advanced developers now. Yeah, great. Yes, if that was, well, it depends on what it is. Not the whole application, no. I mean, like, I could have, as long as I wasn't using COM, okay, so if I took out the report piece with Word, actually, you can just check the automation factory is available, okay, and if it's not, then that means you're running inside a browser. The Excel import piece also wouldn't have worked either, because that's going to accessing your file system and grabbing the file. But the filter builder would have worked fine. In browser, okay. It just depends on because you just don't have access to the machine's file system or other applications running on the machine if you're running inside a browser. So you can absolutely use extensions that aren't doing that though inside of the browser, and it gives you a lot more reach too. So that's more if you have maybe a public site that you want people to use. It supports the Mac and the other browsers and all that stuff. Okay. Otherwise, most of the time, like business applications, we're talking about departmental level in the corporation or small medium businesses. Desktop is probably going to be a more popular choice for a lot of the types of apps that this is building, but it's not limited to that. Yeah.
Is there any thought given to the possibility for disconnected type of samples? So you have the pieces of data that you're taking with them offline, but then coming back in combination with something like the
That's interesting. I mean, you could write an extension to cache data, I suppose. I suppose it's that. Because you already have the data on the screen, and the screen is, you can easily dump data out. But by default, it doesn't come with, out of the box caching data. Like if you lose internet connectivity, you lose internet connectivity, right? Okay. Or lose connectivity to your server is really what it is, right? So it might be intranet connectivity, right? So that's not out of the box, but I can't see why you wouldn't be able to create an extension to do that. Yeah.
For that Word example, I mean, you said that you could put it on the back server, right? Populate the Word
You could.
on the server, then put it to the email and email.
Totally. And actually, I think Matt Sampson, a person on our team, is creating an example that does that. I was particularly using the front because I wanted the user to kind of have a little interaction with it. But you could use like OpenXML SDK and just generate the document that way. Because when the entity goes into the save pipeline, you have the same data as there. Exactly. That's a good solution for the in browser, by the way. You would just have to send it down. You'd have to send down the document stream, and then it would have to, it would open Word if they had it, and if not, it would go, Okay. Any other questions? Yeah? SQL CE is not supported in V1, though I get that question a lot, and I don't see why you couldn't create a RIA service wrapper around it. But we didn't choose to go with it at first because it wasn't multi-user when we started developing LightSwitch. So that's why we use SQL Express out of the box. Now that it's multi-user, we can circle back and take a look at it for next version because it's a little lighter weight. Yep. Any other questions? Did you like it? Give me a time? All right. All right, enjoy LightSwitch. Thank you.